In this video, we will be resuming our 2020 September question paper of economics. Okay, so let's get to it. So the first question is given that there is a total revenue function and there is a total cost function, and we have to find out which of the following is correct, right? So let's first understand what is total revenue. Total revenue is basically the total receipts that a firm or a seller receives by selling goods and services, right? So it is total receipts that a seller or a firm receives by selling goods and services. And total cost is nothing but the minimum amount of cost. The minimum amount of cost undertaken by a firm or a seller to produce the goods and services. So both of these terms are very important to understand. And after that, we see that we have to find out which of the following is correct. And in the option, we have marginal revenue, there is a marginal cost, and we have to find out which of this relationship is correct. Okay, so let's look at that. So we know that by using basic calculus, we know that we can find the marginal revenue as the differentiation of total revenue with respect to Q. So this we have to do. And similarly, for our marginal cost, we can differentiate total cost with respect to Q. That is the per unit. Okay. So it's very simple that when we have total revenue as 1400 Q minus 6Q square, and we know that total cost is 1500 plus 80Q. So when we differentiate that with respect to Q, we find that marginal revenue becomes 1400 minus 12Q and marginal cost becomes 80. Okay. Now we have to find the relationship that which of that following is correct. So from that this relationship, we see that we can build a relationship that the marginal revenue, this marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. So this marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, right? And we know that the marginal cost is 80. So now what we can do is we can easily find which of the options were correct. So when we are here, we can see that the first option is correct, right? Because marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, and the second option, that is marginal cost, which is equal to 80. So from the options, we have number 1 as correct, right? Now let's look at the different question. Here the question is, labor force participation rate is given by which of the following, right? Which of the following correctly defines labor force participation rate? So we have 4 options here. So first let's find out what is labor force participation rate. Okay, so before going into labor force participation rate, let's first understand what is labor force. So we know that labor force is the sum of the unemployed and the unemployed. So they build the labor force, and the summation is equal to the labor force. And again, we need to know what is unemployment rate. So unemployment rate is the percentage of the labor force that is unemployed. Okay, and it is given by this equation, that is unemployment rate equals to number of unemployment divided by labor force into 100. So this is the equation for unemployment rate. So we are only taking into the number of people who are unemployed, and we are looking at that by having the denominator as labor force. Okay, now let's look at what is labor force participation rate. So by definition, labor force participation rate is nothing but the percentage change or the percentage of the adult population that is in the labor force. Okay, so what do we mean by adult population? So adult population, we mean the total working age population, and it is referred to as 15 to 64 years. So 15 to 64 years is considered as labor force total working age population. And the formula for this labor force participation rate is given here. Okay, so this is the formula that we are looking for. It is nothing but the labor force divided by the adult population. Okay, so we are getting it from this unemployment rate and the labor force idea. So these three equations, the first equation is this is the second equation, and this is the third equation or formula, whatever you call it. So these are important for us to remember that what is labor force. Labor force is nothing but the number of employed plus number of unemployed. The summation of that is labor force. Secondly, the unemployment rate is nothing but the number of unemployed divided by the labor force multiplied by 100. Okay, and thirdly and most importantly, labor force participation rate is nothing but the, the labor force divided by the adult population or the total working age population as referred by OECD, right? So we have got our answer, that is labor force participation rate equals to labor force divided by adult population into 100. So we know that the answer is number 3. Okay, now let's look at the different question. Okay, this question is saying that what is growth rate of population. Okay, so there are 4 options given here. We have to find out which is the correct one. Okay, now let's understand this terminology. So firstly, when we look at the growth rate of population or the population growth rate, so it is nothing but the rate at which the number of individuals in a population increases in a given time period, and it is expressed as a fraction of the initial population. Okay, for a certain population there is an increase, and this is in terms of a time, right? On that rate of increase is called population growth rate. And one more thing to note here is that when the growth rate or the growth ratio is 0, it will indicate that there were some number there were the same number of individuals at the beginning and at the end of time period. Suppose there is a time period t, and there is suppose a time period equals to t plus 1. Okay, this is period 1, this is period 2, and in these two periods, if the growth rate or the growth ratio is 0, if the growth ratio is 0, that means the same number of populations are there. Okay, the same number of populations are there, and it is related to uh, significant changes in birth rates, death rates, and immigration rates, and the age distribution between the two times. So for this terminologies, birth rate, death rate, and immigration rate, we will have to look at the basic statistics, and we will have to read that. We'll be going for this in some other video. So right now let's understand what is growth rate of population. Okay, there's one more terminology which is called crude death rate. This is also important. That is the rate of natural increase, and the rate of natural increase is defined as the crude birth rate minus crude death rate. So this crude death rate and crude birth rate are important, and the differential between these two is called natural increase. This is also important, natural increase. Okay, and one more thing which is asked in this question is that how is it expressed? So this is expressed as a rate per 1000 population, per 1000 population. Now let's get back to the question. Having understood all this, the question was what is the growth rate of population, and we know that the growth rate of population is a rate at which population increases per 1000 annum. Okay, so the answer is number 1. Fine. Okay, so let's finish this video here, and we'll be continuing discussing other questions in the next video. Stay tuned, do like and subscribe, and if you have any questions, you can write to us in the comment section, or you can find us on social media, and the handle is EcoNet GRF. Thank you.